Scientifically accurate information is more crucial than ever today as we grapple with global catastrophes like pandemics and climate change. However, it is getting harder and harder to distinguish fact from fiction online due to the flood of false information. Some of this misinformation, which is frequently motivated by corporate and political goals, fosters hatred towards science and scientists. But this is not the first instance in which research has been a risky venture. Welcome to Z. Today, we're going to take a remarkable look at 4 scientists who were murdered simply for speaking the truth. Do you require answers to the important queries? So why not join Z to see more videos like this one? And ring the bell for more inspiring material. Even while seeking the truth is a worthy goal, it occasionally results in catastrophic outcomes. It's not always safe to learn how the world works, and it happens occasionally for scientists to die in a botched experiment. This was the case with Russian physicist George Wilhelm Richman, who died in electrical experimentation in 1753, becoming the first person ever to do so. He was struck in the head by ball lightning as he rushed to check the thunder he had heard. Although this murder was unintentional, there have been many instances where scientists have been targeted and killed. Anecdotes claim that Hippasus of Metapontum, a Greek philosopher and Pythagoras' disciple whose life spanned the 6th and 5th centuries BC, was a prime example of this. The Pythagoreans, a devoted sect of the mathematician's disciples, preached the significance of numbers in the world and thought that entire numbers, and their ratios, revealed information about the nature of the cosmos. However, Hippasus is often expressly attributed with discovering irrational numbers, a fact that some claim may have endangered his life. Hippasus wondered what the square root of 2 was, and found that it could not be expressed by a fraction of 2 whole numbers. However, the Pythagoreans reportedly weren't pleased when he announced his discoveries. And after that, Hippasus perished at sea. A penalty imposed by the gods, or according to certain legends, the Pythagoreans. Giordano Bruno, an Italian philosopher, mathematician, and cosmologist who lived in the 16th century, was another well-known scientist who perished too soon. Bruno dared to challenge the widely held belief at the time that the sun revolved around the Earth and that the Earth was the center of the cosmos. Bruno, who embraced the Copernican theory of the universe, thought that the Earth circled around the sun, which is obviously true. He also believed that the stars were far-off suns with their own planets, some of which might contain life, and that the cosmos was endless and hence had no center. This concept was known as cosmic pluralism at the time, and it incited violent outbursts from the Catholic Church. The Church and certain historians have argued that Bruno's cosmology had nothing to do with their persecution of him. But during his trials and in the accusations made against him, his belief in extraterrestrial life was a recurring theme. A notion like that threatened to diminish the significance of the human race in the universe, which the Church held to be unique creatures made in the image of God. In the end, Bruno was set on fire and killed alive in 1600, surrounded by his own written works. Galileo Galilei, a famous astronomer, would eventually get a life sentence for concurring in the notion that the Earth revolves around the sun. Ignaz Semmelweis suffered more indirectly as a result of his discovery, whereas Hippasus and Bruno were killed as a result of telling the truth in some fashion. Semmelweis was a Hungarian doctor who advocated for the adoption of antiseptic practices in hospitals quite early on. Even if it seems evident now how important it is to wash our hands, this was not the case in the 19th century. Semmelweis tried to explain why midwives' wards had a substantially lower mortality rate than those of doctors. After much experimentation, he came to the conclusion that the reason was that doctors were contaminating patients by handling cadavers before treating other patients. His findings were conclusive. Washing hands greatly decreased fatality rates. When asked for a theoretical justification for his conclusion, he was unable to do so because at the time, the idea of germs wasn't widely acknowledged. He was mocked by doctors, had a mental collapse, and was put in a hospital against his will in 1865. He was severely beaten there, placed in a straitjacket, and died 2 weeks later from an infection. He could have saved many lives, including his own, if the medical establishment had acknowledged his discoveries at the time. And finally, Soviet botanist Nikolai Vavilov was another scientist who perished tragically while imprisoned. He was a prime example of having the proper information at the wrong time, which was unfortunate for him. Vavilov is regarded today as a great botanist who spent a lot of his time working to improve important crops like wheat and maize. He clashed with Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, who by the 1930s had become into a harsh autocrat. Vavilov was a proponent of Mendelian inheritance, which showed how genes, which are now known to be invisible variables, reliably determine a plant's or animal's features. Trofim Denisovich Lysenko, a pseudoscientific scientist who championed Lamarckism, the inheritance of acquired characteristics, was, however, embraced by Stalin. This hypothesis suggests that parent organisms can pass on qualities they've acquired during their lives to their offspring. Although this hypothesis formerly had a large following, we now know that it is fundamentally flawed. Although our parents' psychological influence on our development is undeniable, the biological characteristics we inherit from them at birth are determined by their genetic makeup. Nevertheless, Lysenko, a favorite of Stalin's, attained prominence by taking the helm of the Institute of Genetics at the USSR Academy of Sciences. However, Vavilov rejected Lysenko's theories out of concern that they might have terrible effects on agriculture. Vavilov was then detained in August 1940 on suspicion of espionage and sabotage because authorities believed he was attempting to obstruct Soviet research. He was questioned, given a death sentence that was later commuted to 20 years in prison, but due to the hard conditions in prison, he passed away in the early months of 1943. He most certainly died of starvation in a gulag or a camp for forced labor. However, some accounts contend that he was murdered and put into a lime pit, not starved to death. In any case, Vavilov's efforts to guide his nation in the right direction ended up costing him his life. Lysenko's theories also played a role in the famines that resulted in the deaths of millions of people in the Soviet Union and the People's Republic of China. Clearly, there are a variety of risks that scientists may encounter. Even while the majority of disciplines are essentially risk-free, some do have risks when it comes to experimentation. But the other danger to scientists is from those who disagree with their findings, hypotheses, and conclusions. The use of aggressive speech has also significantly increased in the current political environment, which is becoming more polarized. From people and organizations that disagree with scientific viewpoints, some of this rage and hatred has been directed against scientists. Even while scientists often make mistakes and lack morality, a lot of the rage is still stoked by false material that has been carefully selected or taken from questionable sources. History teaches us that these threats are occasionally more than just empty rhetoric. Because those 4 scientists were murdered because they told the truth. How do you feel? Do you think we missed anything? Please share your thoughts in the comments, watch other additional Z videos, and subscribe to receive notifications of our newest posts.